Taoiseach, I'm sure you will agree with me that people need to know what they are eating, and also agree with me that the same standards should apply in terms of quality and ingredients and the makeup of meat, no matter what the price is. People's right to food safety should not depend on how much they're able to spend on food. And I was concerned listening or reading reported comments by Professor Alan O'Reilly in relation to yesterday's revelations that we need to look more closely at the ingredients and what goes into these sort of products. He was referring to what he termed were food products at the lower end of the chain, implying, of course, that we're not looking as closely as we should in relation to such food products. Now, yesterday's revelations, Taoiseach, are truly shocking in relation to the presence of horse and pig meat DNA in a variety of meat products. Such revelations undermine trust and confidence on behalf of the consumer in products. And the authenticity of food products is called into question as a result. The veracity of food labelling is now in doubt as a result of these revelations. And I think the President of the IFA put it well this morning when he made a very pertinent observation that the extraordinary rigour that now applies in the food supply chain to the primary producer does not appear to be applicable or applied with the same degree of rigour to the processing end, and suggesting that there's a potential weak link in the food supply chain. Taoiseach, I would ask you if you could inform the House, when was the Department of Agriculture first informed in relation to the outcome of the tests undertaken by the Food Safety Authority, and when was the Minister informed? And why has it taken until yesterday for the public to be informed, given that the tests were carried out last November? And will you undertake that the Minister will take questions in the House today under private notice questions, so that deputies can have a transparent presentation in relation to this issue? Will you also undertake to publish a full chronology of all the events that have led up to yesterday from the outset, and to publish all documentation between the Food Safety Authority and the Department of Agriculture and the Food Safety Authority and the companies concerned? We need nothing less than 100% transparency in relation to this issue.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I do agree with you, Deputy Martin, that people should know and have a right to know what they are eating and what the content of particularly processed food is, and that there should be no differentiation in that knowledge as between people who purchase expensive cuts of meat and those who purchase less expensive processed meat. The Minister for Agriculture and Food gave the Government a briefing on this matter yesterday. I have spoken with him this morning about it, and I'm very happy to make available to you the information that I have been supplied with by his department. The Minister himself will be willing to make whatever information he can available, and I'm sure will make himself available to answer questions from members at the appropriate time. First of all, I think it has to be said that the Food Safety Authority has clarified that the results of the survey do not pose a public health risk, and that this is not a food safety issue. And it's important, I think, to clarify that for consumers and for the industry. The Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine and the Food Safety Authority are working closely to identify exactly how this situation occurred. On receipt of the laboratory results from the Food Safety Authority, the Department commenced a full-scale investigation. The priority is to ensure the source of this problem is uncovered and appropriate action is taken to ensure that there is no question mark about the quality of beef products from Ireland. The investigation is focusing on the individual ingredients used in the manufacture of the affected batch. A number of these individual ingredients were imported into the state. The Food Safety Authority sampled 19 salami products, 31 beef meal products and 27 frozen burger products in a targeted survey on the authenticity of such products available from retail outlets in Ireland. The findings of the laboratory tests provided by the Food Safety Authority to the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine on the 14th of January revealed the presence of equine DNA in some beef burger products, as well as trace or minute amounts of porcine DNA. The survey results showed the presence of equine DNA at a high level, 29% of the meat content, in one particular sample of frozen burger. On receipt of the laboratory results, the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine immediately initiated an investigation in the particular plant which produced the burger, showing the higher finding to determine the source of the equine DNA. The investigation is focusing on the individual ingredients used in the manufacture of the affected batch. A number of these ingredients were imported into the state. The Food Safety Authority published the findings of the survey on the 15th of January, emphasising that there is no food safety risk. The Food Safety Authority also stated that the retailers, Tesco's, Dunn, Lidl, Aldi and Iceland, selling the products were removing all the implicated batches from sale. The detailed results are as follows. 31 beef meal products were tested, 21 showed trace or very low levels of porcine DNA, all were negative for equine DNA. 19 salami products were tested, all were negative for equine DNA. 27 beef burger products, with one exception mentioned above, 10, with the one exception, that was the one with the very high level, there were 10 with trace or very low levels of equine DNA and 23 with trace or very low levels of porcine DNA. I can supply the Deputy with the details, the timeline in which these tests were carried out, if you wish.
Thank you. Deputy Martin.
Yeah, I thank the Taoiseach for his reply. I think the timeline is very, very important. I think the Minister himself has just been on radio, I learn, when he is saying that the Department was actually first informed on the 21st of December about the outcome of the tests, and that the Department somehow were asked then by the FSAI to assist the FSAI in getting more samples. And what I'm interested in is, in December, it was clear that there was disturbing outcomes from the tests that were started in November, and it was considered that more tests were required. What informed the decision not to publicly make those results available, if I'm correct in terms of interpreting what the Minister said on national radio just some minutes ago? Can you explain why, or what informed the decision-making process that resulted in the issue only being published yesterday? Because surely if the tests were indicating worrying results in terms of the presence of such material in meat, the public should have been alerted far earlier. And can you undertake that not only would you, and I appreciate you've said you will publish the chronology, but that all documentation between the FSAI and the Department from the outset of this situation would be published, and that we don't have to, like we've had to in other cases, go through the laborious method of freedom of information to ascertain what's vital documentation in terms of the public interest.
Well, as I said earlier, I spoke with the Minister for Agriculture, Food and Marine this morning, and he is very clear that he will be very open in respect of providing information to the public and to the House about everything that happened here. I can provide you with the information I've been given by his department this morning in respect of the timeline. The Food Safety Authority took first samples in mid-November, and those were tested in a lab called Identigen. At the end of November, the Food Safety Authority resampled. They took further samples. Those samples were sent to a laboratory abroad in December. The Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, on the 21st of December, was requested, at the request of the Food Safety Authority, assisted the Food Safety Authority in taking samples of ingredients at some processing plants. The results from those tests were received by the Food Safety Authority on Friday last, the 11th of January. The Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine was informed by the Food Safety Authority on Monday, the 14th of January, of those tests. The Food Safety Authority provided the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine with details of the sampling results at a meeting at lunchtime on Monday, the 14th of January. And at that meeting, the implications were evaluated and discussed. Once the Food Safety Authority had advised the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine of the details of those sampling results, the Department immediately commenced a full-scale investigation. And as I mentioned in my earlier reply, the Department is carrying out that full-scale investigation of what happened here.
Thank you.
The Minister was told, I understand, on Monday after that meeting, and he informed the Cabinet on Tuesday.
Deputy Jerry Adams.
Gwrmagad Conculia agus Conculia Stanis Babalium or Dus Banactian Blianur a Horde Steve Sha Goldar agus to Sullivan Guru Susmai Ogubsha Marasol Dove ni Pobble and Tragar and Malfersta Susser B the Lin Nashaktana Atakaitcha. Tanisha, I'm sure you're concerned at events in recent weeks in the north, and my lease should not be exaggerated. I think they do show the need for constant and consistent support for the political and peace processes. And despite all your other obligations, the need for the government to be focused on these matters. Now, you will know that the Good Friday Agreement states that symbols and emblems should be used in a manner which promotes mutual respect rather than division. And this recognises the reality that there are two flags that the vast majority of people in the 6 counties give their allegiance to, the Union flag and the Irish tricolour. And for this reason, some councils fly no flags, while at Stormont and in other councils, the Union flag flies on designated days only. Now, Belfast City Council took legal advice on this issue. It received advice from the Equality Commission. There was an equality impact assessment, and the decision in December was in keeping with these, and ironically enough, with the protocols in Britain itself. It was a democratic decision and was entirely proper and appropriate, and democratic and peaceful opposition to it would also be proper. But I'm sure you will agree that the violent sectarian reaction is entirely wrong. I'm sure you will agree that the illegal protests need to be brought to an end before someone is killed, and that the attacks on the Short Strand community need to stop. I visited there on Sunday. The Deputy First Minister is there today. Short Strand is a community under siege. There have been 16 illegal loyalist marches in recent weeks and countless sectarian interface protests. And since the recent violence began, the Deputy First Minister, as you will know, your department has been in contact with the Executive, has been endeavouring to bring about all-party opposition to the violence and the protests, and he continues to do so. Now, Taoiseach, you will remember when the 2 British soldiers were killed in 2009, and indeed when the 2 PSNI officers were killed after that, that Martin McGuinness stood shoulder to shoulder with Peter Robertson and in a very, very robust way set out opposition to those dreadful events and led a robust all-party and cross-community response. There was no equivocation, and the same need is there today. The same all-party approach is required today. So, Taoiseach, I'm asking you to join in calling for an all-party, cross-community response to bring these illegal, violent protests to an end.
Thank you.
And I would also ask you to visit East Belfast tomorrow. You will be there, I presume, to visit with the people there, and particularly with the people in the Short Strand and the loyalist areas adjacent to it.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Well, ar dús bhfuilm banachtaí na haflína bhrún orta freisin agus an óir ar gachbald gan cha, and while I'm on that, I'm aware that you also had surgery recently, Deputy Adams, and I want to wish you a good recovery. In recent weeks, and let me say first of all that I am very concerned, and the government is very concerned about what we have been seeing in Belfast and elsewhere in recent weeks. The widespread street violence that we have seen, attacks on the police service of Northern Ireland, including the attempted murder of police officers and widespread attempts to intimidate public representatives and their families. And I have condemned these events unreservedly. I have, as you are aware, remained in contact with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Theresa Villiers, and with all of the party leaders in Northern Ireland throughout that period of time. Over the past week, I have spoken with Peter Robinson, Martin McGuinness, David Ford, Mike Nesbitt and Alistair MacDonagh. I will be travelling to Belfast tomorrow morning to meet with the Secretary of State and the First Minister and Deputy First Minister. And officials from my department continue to work closely with the British Government and with political representatives in Northern Ireland to identify ways to address not just the current crisis but its underlying problems. And indeed, my officials have been in close contact with all of what has been happening on the ground. My officials visited St Matthew's Church and the Short Strand community yesterday, and they have reported to me extensively on the situation locally. I am concerned by reports that the attacks on houses in the Short Strand were premeditated, and I condemn them. And I will be discussing that matter with the Secretary of State and the First Minister and Deputy First Minister when I meet them tomorrow, and I hope to visit the Short Strand area and other community interfaces in the near future. The economic cost of recent events is becoming apparent. Apart from the cost of the policing operation, which is estimated at €7 million, foreign direct investment, the retail trade and tourism are all at risk. The Confederation of British Industry Director in Northern Ireland has warned of the economic damage being inflicted on local businesses, tourism and investment. It is my hope that out of this setback we will see a redoubling of efforts to achieve a genuinely reconciled society in Northern Ireland. It is a reminder to all of us that the peace process is exactly that, a process which still has some way to go. Political cooperation and security cooperation on this island have never been better, and we can rely on those relationships of trust and on the resilience of the Good Friday Agreement to create space for progress beyond the current difficulties. The Irish Government has no closer political relationship than with the Northern Ireland Executive. Over the past year alone, the Taoiseach, myself and Irish Government ministers have met with members of the Northern Ireland Executive on over 50 occasions. The persistence of sectarianism in Northern Ireland and the absence of agreement on the shared future agenda contribute to the likelihood of incidents such as those we have witnessed in recent weeks. Building relationships between divided communities takes time and a sustained effort and investment. And I want to assure you and to assure the House that this Government is committed to doing just that.
Thank you, Tánaiste. Deputy Adams.
Well, I thank you, first of all, for your best wishes, Tánaiste, but I thank you also for your response. And I'm pleased that you will travel to meet with the First and Deputy First Minister tomorrow, and I have been in touch, as have other Belfast representatives, with your department. I do think you should try and carve out time tomorrow to meet with people in those communities. I appreciate the work that's ongoing, and I also understand very much the many responsibilities which the government have, not least on the economic front. But as you say, I paraphrase it, the peace process cannot be taken for granted. And what we need is an ongoing, steady, almost invisible engagement by government ministers right across all sectors in the north. We also need to explore, some of the people who are behind these protests. I mean, the British National Party are engaged in whipping up these tensions and fears. The Ulster Volunteer Force is also heavily involved, and those attacks were premeditated over recent evenings. And an issue which this Dáil has to address, and which I think everyone who lives in this island has to address, is the issue of sectarianism. It has to be tackled, and the ongoing need to recognise I'm from Belfast. These protesters do not represent the vast majority of people in Belfast. The vast majority of people in Belfast are living in a modern city, which has many, many proud traditions, and which they want to see shared on the basis of equality. That's the view. That's what we have come through in the last 40 years, and that's what the vast majority of people have settled for. So I think the government needs to continuously underpin, in this state as well as in the northern state, principles of equality, parity of esteem and mutual respect. And I'll finish on just by, again, and I'm not preaching, I'm not lecturing, I'm just making a point, this needs constant attention. It cannot be taken for granted. And, you know, it's the grace of God that someone hasn't been killed. So we need to get all representatives of civic society, of the community, of the political classes, of the business classes, standing shoulder to shoulder against what is a very, very small minority.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I think it does have to be said that this is a very small minority. You know, people have a right to protest. And somebody who's unhappy with a democratic decision made by the elected members of Belfast City Council, they're entitled to protest against it. We all defend that right. But what they are not entitled to do is to go out, to fire petrol bombs at the police, to go around and to intimidate and threaten elected public representatives, including some of those public representatives who were involved in making that decision. And they do not have the right to disrupt, in the way that they have done so, the normal business life of Belfast and other areas. And it has to stop. And yes, you are also right that what is required here is the political leadership in Northern Ireland standing shoulder to shoulder. And I have spoken with, and you will be aware of this, I'm sure, from the Deputy First Minister, I'm sure, that I have been very much in touch with him and with other political leaders over this period of time since this problem arose sometime before Christmas. We had hoped that it would die down over the Christmas and New Year period, but of course it has continued now. I am anxious. Tomorrow's meeting, the original plan was that we would have that meeting on Friday, but I think there were problems at the Belfast Inn and people being available. And I was anxious that the meeting did not get pushed forward to a future date. So tomorrow is there's a cabinet meeting tomorrow afternoon, for example, on the jobs crisis here, which is very important. So I decided, rather than be here for leaders' questions tomorrow, that it would be appropriate to have the meeting tomorrow rather than let it run into next week, because this is something that I do not want to see long-fingered. It's something that we want to deal with now. I want to work with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and I've been in regular touch with her about what has been taking place, to provide the support from the two governments to the political leadership, the Northern Ireland Executive, in getting on top of this situation, and to put an end to the street violence that is taking place, that has been taking place over the last period of time, but also to address the issues which are at the root of this, issues relating to shared society, issues related to concerns that people have, and to dealing with the problem of sectarianism in Northern Ireland, which you have rightly identified.
Thank you. And I'll call on Deputy McGrath on behalf of the Technical.
Cormac good, Count Cola. In the first instance, I'd like to wish you Happy New Year, Count Cola, and hope we'll have a good interaction while I'm in this position. I'd like to
look forward to that.
I want to raise an issue which I feel is of huge importance to the public out there, both rural and urban, and indeed in the first instance to sympathise with all the victims of crime in recent times. We're dealing, of course, with gangland crime in the cities, and indeed my own town quite recently, but now in recent weeks especially, the attacks on elderly and families in rural and indeed urban Ireland. And I believe this is a direct result, while I don't blame you for the criminals, Taoiseach, I believe it's a direct result of your policies, of the policies of this government, and especially, and I'm delighted that the Minister for Justice is here, Minister Shatter, because his policies pursued by your government in the last almost 2 years now are aiding and abetting criminality, because they have denuded rural Ireland, and now I see urban Ireland, places like Stepaside and indeed Whitehall, Garda stations are being closed. The Gardaí do not have squad cars. I had an incident reported to me only yesterday evening. I have an incident the night before where a member of the community alerted Gardaí when he saw some strange activity. And when the Gardaí arrived, they didn't have a flash lamp. They were using their telephone. That is the sad state of affairs, Minister of Justice, in this country. I have another situation where a Garda rang me from a Garda station, not in Tipperary, where he didn't have a light in the bathroom to use the bathroom. He didn't have a light bulb to put in it. And this is facts. And you know that, Minister. And you know that, Taoiseach. They're facts. You know, I ask you, Minister.
Sorry, Deputy. Would you put your question to the Taoiseach?
I put it to the Taoiseach. Good.
Thank you.
Look, we've heard. I'm asking.
Sorry, without interruption.
I didn't hear you, Controller, but...
Without interruption, please, will you allow the Deputy put his question to the Taoiseach?
My question is, as well as expressing sympathy with the victims of all the crimes, and the fact that these crimes have not occurred, if the victims' savings would be safe in the banks, but people's money is not safe anywhere with your Taoiseach, with your policies, and are in credit unions. I'm asking you, Taoiseach, and the government, if you'd consider a public information campaign and an awareness campaign around security, first of all, and secondly, around, again, as we had in the past, the fact that people are keeping cash in the houses because they're afraid to keep it in any of the institutions, guaranteed ones or otherwise, and by so doing to support Muintir na Tíre and indeed all the other groups that are helping to fit safety alarms and equipment, and indeed to thank, and you might be surprised at this, Taoiseach, and I thank Minister Big Phil, my friend, the Minister Hogan, for doing a U-turn on the alarms that were cut recently, and to thank him for doing that, and to ask for further monies to be put in there, because people have to be safe in their homes.
Thank you, Deputy.
If they can't sleep in their beds, it leads to ill health, it leads to moving out of their homes and afraid to go back. And I asked to the Taoiseach, I asked the Minister of Justice, to visit some of the places with the Gardaí, and to visit some of the homes of the people who have been savagely attacked. In some cases, not only once, but twice and maybe 3 times.
Thank you.
There's no place safe, not even the sacristies or the churches anymore. So I ask you, Taoiseach, to deal with this seriously. Thank you.
Well, the issue that Deputy McGrath raises is a very serious issue, and I want to share with him, and I'm sure other members of the House, the widespread outrage at the recent incidents of aggravated burglary, and to condemn in the strongest possible terms those who prey on vulnerable and sometimes isolated members of our community. The Gardaí are determined to do everything that they can to bring the perpetrators to justice, and I call on anyone who might be able to help the Gardaí in any way to get in touch with them. The Minister for Justice and Equality is also acutely conscious of the broader concerns which exist concerning burglary, and is in regular contact with the Garda Commissioner on measures to counter it. In particular, last year the Garda Commissioner introduced Operation Fiachla to tackle mobile gangs involved in burglary around the country. Between April and December 2012, 3,538 persons have been arrested and 1,924 persons charged as part of that operation. In addition to these enforcement measures, An Garda Síochána work closely with communities through Community Alert, Neighbourhood Watch and other organisations to provide expert crime prevention advice and support to communities. I'm particularly aware of the position in Donegal recently, for example, and in border counties. And it's important to note that there is an excellent cooperation between the Garda Síochána and the PSNI in disrupting and investigating attempts by criminals who try to take advantage of the border. While, of course, the recent incidents are very disturbing, the latest recorded crime figures, which were published at the end of last year, suggest that Garda operations are having an impact. In particular, the quarterly figures on burglary are down from the levels experienced earlier in 2012, prior to the introduction of Operation Fiachla. I acknowledge Deputy McGrath's praise for the Minister for the Environment, who, of course, met with Muintir na Tíre recently. And I also want to say that Muintir na Tíre are doing excellent work, and the Minister for the Environment, Minister for Justice and Equality, and the government as a whole will be willing to work with Muintir na Tíre and with other community organisations in providing the best possible advice, particularly to elderly people and particularly to those who are living in isolated areas.
Deputy McGrath, 1 minute supplementary. Thank you.
Good, Taoiseach. I do want to acknowledge your praise for Muintir na Tíre as a former board member, and indeed they have 1,300 community left groups throughout the country. I'm a member since 1986 myself, and indeed I support totally on Garda Síochána. But the Garda Síochána cannot work without the tools of the trade. You mentioned Operation Fiacla. Well, they must have wintered into this and lost all their teeth because they haven't got any equipment. They haven't got any squad cars. We can see it on a daily basis. Stations that had up to 8 patrol cars are now down to 2. There's some silly rule there where they have to put them off the road at 300,000. Surely in these times, if they're MOT'd and they're working perfectly, they can be kept longer than that. I want to also acknowledge the role of the IFA and farming organisations, and indeed community left groups and ordinary people. Because policing cannot be done without the support of the community. But by removing the Garda stations, by removing the Gardaí that know the people, that are on the Gardaí on the beat, you're creating a huge impediment. The squad car flying in or flying out, in some cases when they don't even have them, but when they come after a number of hours, it's not the same. You have to have the local man on the beat, and I want to commend them, all the service to Gardaí over the years, and more especially the people that were on the beat. And if you want to have confidence in people, they must be visible, they must be, I don't mean in your face, but they must be at the local matches, involved in the sporting organisation. They must be living in the communities and actively engaged. And morale is seriously low in Garda Síochána at the moment. And I want to ask the Taoiseach, will he speak to the Garda Commissioner? Because I honestly don't believe that the real story is getting up to the top echelons and getting across to the Minister for Justice.
Thank you. Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, let me say that the Garda Síochána are doing an excellent job. And I think that what we need to have, and what the Minister for Justice and Equality is determined that we will have, is a modern, effective and efficient police service in this state. The current Garda strength is 13,400. The total number of Garda stations, even after the rationalisation of Garda stations, will stand at 564, which is far more comparably than you either have in Northern Ireland or in Scotland. And the rationale behind this is to put the Gardaí on the beat, to put the Gardaí where they are needed, which is not behind a desk in a police station, but actually out in the patrol car, out on the beat, out working with the community in order to prevent crime and in order to detect it. The reality is that crime in 12 out of the 14 categories which are measured were down in 2012 compared to 2011, according to the figures that are published by the Central Statistics Office. Additional money is being provided in 2013 for the purchase of Garda vehicles. So the emphasis here is to equip the Garda Síochána with the resources that they need in order to deal with the crime situation, and the evidence is that those reforms are succeeding. But of course, any crime against any individual is one crime too many. And the determination of the Minister for Justice and Equality and of the Garda Commissioner and the Garda Síochána is to deal with all crime as effectively as possible, and to encourage the public and organisations, community organisations, to work closely with the Gardaí in fighting crime.
Thank you. That completes.